this is coming from our heart. This is not coming from somebody asking us to do this. We believe that this is one of the most important conversations we can have right now.
We want to invite you on a journey.
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
conversation. This isn't just for us.
There we are.
We're back.
We're back.
Woohoo!
Yeah. Hey, thanks for watching. Good
Good morning.
Everybody.
Depending on where you're coming from.
Yeah. All right. Well, let us know. A couple of you have jumped in and let us know where you're watching from. And we want to hear from you. Mention it in the comments, but most everybody knows, but really they're tuning into a live podcast recording. Right?
Exactly. And this isn't just for us, right? The time we have here, we're actually going to engage with people that are joined with us and in this important conversation we have today.
Yeah. We want to see your comments. And we always say this, as we're cooking along, you might feel like your comments, there's often a delay by the time we see them, and that's okay. We'll come back and hit them. We don't want you to feel like your comments aren't going to matter and that we've moved on.
For sure.
So what's new, Scott? You were at a church. Was it this weekend?
Last night, actually.
Oh, last night.
Yep. Over in Ludington to Cornerstone Baptist Church. Yeah, it was blowing snow last night as I was driving along. But, I wanted to just give a shout out to that church. God is doing incredible work. They had a ton of kids, just a ton of kids reaching their community, and, other churches joining them as well in that, and had some leaders from other churches helping.
Oh, wow. That's kind of neat.
Yeah, they're doing Grand Prix next week, 75 cars.
Wow.
And so Pastor Jason's just doing a great job with the kids over there. And it actually ties into today a little bit. I really saw kids being engaged, and I stepped into they actually have a Trek ministry, for middle schoolers. And there's about 7 to 10 kids and teens in there, and really encouraging. As we walked in, the leader asked, "So, what are your talents, and how can you use that to glorify God?"
Yeah.
And so there's
question.
really good engagement and some conversation around that. And to me, it was like, hey, that is what we're talking about today.
Yeah.
It really is, those kind of conversations. So so want to give a good shout out to Cornerstone and the work that they're doing over there in Ludington, and Pastor Jason. Thanks so much for being an example in our area of a church that's really leaning in and having these conversations with kids and discipling children. Definitely saw that last night.
Well, as you know, we're working through the Resilient book. Snail
away.
space for sure, but that's all right. There's so much good stuff.
We've
Still in chapter 10.
It's been about a year in chapter 10, it seems like.
Feels like it. Well, at least at our pace.
It's good. It's been good.
Because we don't get to do these broadcasts as much as we want, but we're just going to kind of decided we're not going to stress about it. We're just going to do it when we can do it and keep plugging our way through. So we're thankful for those of you who just keep watching with us. Make sure you share this with other people as well.
We got some new people actually today. Leslie from Falmouth. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thank you.
Do we know Bill? Yep. So from Ohio.
What's going on here? Let's see.
Appreciate you guys joining us, and invite others. This is again a conversation as we walk through this important conversation about really reaching and discipling the future leaders of the church. The kids that are in our ministries today, and teens that are in our ministries today. Are we today adequately preparing them for the future? And we've talked about the future Babylon that is even seeming like today, right? And what is 2050 going to look like for them? And are we preparing them for that culture and that world?
Yeah, so we have worked through, really the book itself works through 3 aspects: belong, believe, and become. And then in chapter 10, they kind of work through those again in a little different way. So we've been working through those again. We've kind of, at our pace, we've hit one each time we've had a live stream. So we've looked at it belong. Scott, talk a little bit about the importance of belonging.
Yeah, building that belonging, where this is my tribe. A kid comes into your ministry, or not even into your ministry, but a kid is connected with a leader or somebody at your church, and they have that belonging. Like this is, I belong here. This is my people, right?
Yeah,
and building a connectivity that encourages them to come back.
So we've talked a lot about that, and we don't want to get too bogged down with that, but I just kind of want to share, because one of the things we've talked about here is finding ways that even the little kids can be involved in serving, even on a Sunday morning, right?
Right.
That's important for them to be able to serve in their church. And we have some people in our church that have really kind of grabbed that. I just kind of made a comment at one point. I think it was at the Awana conference, and I said, "Hey, as far as I'm concerned, it wouldn't bother me at all if our little guys were taking offering."
Right.
And somebody grabbed that, and every Sunday now, literally every Sunday, we have our little ones. My son's 8, and and
That's
him and his
awesome.
friends, and even younger than that, they're taking offering. They worked with them, they trained them, and now usually down the middle aisle, it's the youngest ones. The oldest ones are on the outside, and I know for Benson, he looks forward to going to church.
Yep.
He actually talked about not when first he thought, well, if I go to children's church, I'm not going to be able to take offering.
Right.
So he was just going to sit in church. They very quickly grabbed that. They love that. So it's those little things that now this is not just a church. This is my
This is my
church.
church, and that's the important distinction, because oftentimes we see in ministries that we separate so much the children from the adults, and vice versa, and to a point where, okay, well, they're over there, they're in their wing, right,
Right.
of the church, but really a belonging church welcomes them. This is your church, and
Yes.
to share what you guys are doing. That's applying this. Honestly, that's applying this. Having
Right.
having your kids, taking the offering, that is applying this concept of belonging.
Yeah. And I think there's way more you can do besides just that
Oh,
as
for sure.
well. And
Yep.
part of it is teaching and training your adults, or even if you'd say your older adults, right? Your grandmas and grandpas, to take the time for the kids. That's another thing
Yep.
that we
Yep.
love in our church. Because of our disciple making culture that we've been able to build, we have several people that will I'll literally see them on Sunday, sit down
Yeah.
with my kids or somebody else's kids and have a conversation with them.
Yep.
My kids aren't my two youngest kids are not saved yet, and we just keep witnessing to them. And the last time I encouraged them, I said, "Hey, if you have questions, obviously mom and dad want to talk to you,
Yep.
but go talk to." And I named off 3 or 4 people that they're very comfortable,
Right.
that they could they would sit down, and those people would have they would just be thrilled to pour into
Yep.
my kids. So yeah, making sure that they belong, but it's more than that. They can't just belong to a party.
Right. Yeah. We're not just a country club, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
People coming together. There's a foundational truth of belief, right? God's word is the foundation, and having them get that,
Yeah.
the gospel,
Right.
and then the tenets of the faith that will help them again in 2050 to stand,
Right.
to stand up for the truth that they believe, and it's their truth. It's what they believe, and it's firmly rooted. By the age of 13, they say,
Yeah.
by the age of 13, a person's worldview is firmly rooted. The way that they look at the world is set in stone. They're not likely to change their thoughts about who God is,
Right.
or who they are in a culture today, right? With that big question, my identity, right?
Right.
And so, yeah, that belief piece is so important that we're instilling that. And I think the church has done a decent job in that area. Might at times might we may have watered it down, because we think, oh well, kids cannot understand this, right?
Right.
But wow, they
Well, and to that point, let's talk about this real quick, Scott.
and we got to
This
get
is
to become
this
today.
is why we take
We
so
got
long
to
to
get
get
to
through this.
become
But we
today.
had this conversation. Our associate pastor's been preaching through the book of Jonah when he's
Yeah.
preaching, and really bringing Jonah to life. And what we keep hearing in our church is, "Well, I've never seen Jonah that way before. I've
Right.
never." And I said, "Man, that is a disservice to our kids because we're not teaching them that depth that they should,
Right.
that at this age, I myself am looking at Jonah in a way that I've never looked at Jonah before." So I think we've done a good job. I think we can do a better job of, let's not just teach the Bible stories as we've always been taught them
Sure.
at a surface level, but let's dig into what's really going
Yep.
on there and teach
And let's not
them.
skirt around theology.
Right.
The kids are actually asking those questions. And why are they asking? Because they want to know.
Exactly.
They want to
Yep.
learn.
Yep.
And yet sometimes I think we kind of, oh, they're not ready for that. Well, they are.
They are ready for
Today is the
that.
day.
And that's part of the problem. If we don't get them ready for that, if we think they're not ready for that and we don't give it to them, then um
And then
then
what
we're not.
happens? They
Yeah.
grow up, they become an adult, and then there's a lot of assumptions that the church
Yep.
has about their understanding, their
Yes.
belief. Again, so again, we're talking here. What do you guys see? in your church, in the topic of belong, believe, but and then we're going to talk about a lot about become today. But is there something you would like to share that you see your church doing really well in this area of
Yeah.
creating belonging
Yeah,
or
give some
focusing on
ideas
belief?
for
Yeah,
some
we
people who maybe they're saying, "Okay, I get this, but how do we make this work? I know that I need to do this. How do we make this work?" Because sometimes it's simple things. It's really simple things that
right.
we don't think about.
And so today we're really diving into become, and I want to get to this because there's a lot here.
So
This
l-
is important.
let me lead us. This is let me tell you why I think this is so important. I think the belonging, in a sense, it's not easy because we're struggling. We're struggling to break away from our kids' programs and really pour into them,
Right.
right? But on the other hand, we can have kids belong, and I kind of brought that up on purpose. Kids can belong, but what are they belonging to?
Right.
Right? Are they belonging to? I mean, they can belong to their
Sporting event. Yep.
their sports teams. They can belong to a lot of different things. So we can have them belong, and they can love belonging, and then we can teach them
Yeah.
the best that we can.
Right.
When I was a youth pastor, I taught them the best that I could. I took to heart the fact that my teens need to be digging deep, right? And I taught them deep, and they gave me all the right answers. My point being, we can they felt very much like they belonged, and at the time it seemed they believed. But often, what do we see so much? And when you reflect back, if anybody who's worked with teens, if you've worked in youth ministry or young people, what happens?
Mm.
Almost, I mean, the rate of young people
Yeah.
leaving church
70,
is
80%. Mm-hmm.
astronomical. The becoming is really the most important thing because that's the fruit of the other two.
For
Did
sure.
they really believe?
Right.
Right? You have to make them belong so that they'll listen and believe. But did they really
Well,
believe?
have we brought them to the point where we're challenging them to put their belief into
Right,
action?
right.
Into
And
action.
that's what they talk about in this chapter is giving it's more than just sitting in a classroom and giving you the right answers. But now let's actually go do it. Let's go
Yeah.
use it.
And I think it's good for us to sit in this space to feel this a little bit more. Do you guys feel the 75% dropout?
Mhm.
Do we as a church, does that cause us to mourn a little bit?
Well, it does. And here's where my heart is coming from. So our associate pastor and I, this is literally where we're sitting right now as we're looking forward to the vision of our church. I spent 25 years in youth ministry. He spent a lot of years in youth ministry. And we did it right in a sense, right?
Right.
I very much poured into the belonging was there, the teaching was there. There were a lot of my kids knew we very intentionally, if we played games in youth group, it was at the end because if I was teaching and they were talking, I'd just stop and
Right.
wait for them to settle down, and they knew they were cutting into their own game time, right? Like, so it wasn't just to show up and get entertained. And it was the same with him. There was a lot of teaching and a lot of investment. And now you look back and you look at the amount of those kids that are not still in church.
Right.
Those amount of those kids who are not living for the Lord, and it's far greater than the kids that are living for the Lord. And what we've come to the conclusion of is the system that we've built in the American church is broken. We've messed it up.
Right.
So now what do we do?
Well, we don't do what we've done.
Right. You
Right.
cannot keep doing the
You
same
cannot
thing
keep
over
doing
and
the same
over.
thing. And I think so. I want to share this because actually, Pastor Jason, who gave our keynote at our conference this past summer, nailed it. He said,
Yeah.
oftentimes we sit in this place of belong, believe, be done.
Be done, not become,
Belong,
but be
believe,
done.
be
Yeah.
done. Like, okay, we've given you the sense of belonging. We've invested in you as kids. We've given you a space in the church, to have the children's ministry. We've made it entertaining. And then we've also given you some good stories, right? We've
Mhm.
given you a foundation, and churches have done a decent job with that, and they're doing a great job of that. But then I think we go, okay, we've done that. We've accomplished that. So go,
Yeah,
right?
they're
It's
adults
like
now.
you're
Off you
okay.
go.
You're off.
Yep.
We've done our part. This is the part that takes work. This is the piece that is not checking a box. It diving into that doing life with somebody, having those difficult conversations, expecting our kids to live their faith and giving them a space to do that,
Right.
like what your church has begun to do, having them do the offering. That is moving them, certainly belonging, but that's also allowing them to serve,
Right.
right? And that being a part of having them understand what is the offering all about, and now they're a part of that.
Mhm.
Um, you know, uh, and I'll share this because I'm really encouraged by our new curriculum, Bright, that Awana offers, because it really emphasizes this piece uh, of become in a way that a lot of curriculums I'm not seeing it. So we have started doing it in our church, using it at Temple Hill Baptist Church, and the first and second week, I was just floored. So we got through the lesson, right, and then we came to this point where it asks us to have the kids sit and find a different place, and they're like, get up and have move around, right, and then uh, what it asks them to do is to pray silently to themselves.
Mhm.
And here's the topic, and we were like, okay, this is not going to work. This is not, how is this going to happen? Like,
Right.
these kids are not going to do this. They're going to, start talking and be bouncing. They took this on. These kids were like, we've never been asked before to
Mm.
pray.
Yeah.
And they were quiet. And I was like, you could have heard a pin drop in
Well,
there.
doesn't it go back to that we expect too little out of them?
Right. And they loved that. The kids walked away. They're like, can we do that next week? And having them, pray specifically about different things within the lesson and their own spiritual growth. We're asking them to grow spiritually. When do we do that?
Right.
And when do we give them an opportunity to do that? And so this is exactly what we want to talk about today.
Well, we've talked a lot about that. One of the things that we want it to look like, and we're still trying to figure this out, but we
Right.
want to do even a lot of prayer. We're looking to implement a lot more family discipleship and family time,
Right.
where families are together.
Right.
And I'm not the only one pouring into my kids, but their friends' parents are pouring
sure.
into them, and then also that they're praying together. We've talked about having times where, okay, it's good for our little ones to pray with their families in a prayer time, but also let's instruct our older people. And there might be some times we divide up. And my little guy
Yeah.
and my younger girls, they go with, some ladies and some men, and hey, let's have patience. And you guys work with them.
For
So now
sure.
they're praying in a group. There's so many ways that you can do this, but it's very important for them to do that. I think what happens is a lot of times they get out of youth group, or they get out of kids ministry, and they don't know how to function.
Right.
And part of that is,
We haven't taught them.
well, we haven't taught them, and this is going to go against everything anybody here really kind of believes in. But if you look at scripture, where 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 did these segregated learning times come from?
Right. Oh,
And
yeah.
and I think,
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're wrong. They're good. Like, my kids love going to their classes. They need to learn within their age group. But there needs to be more of a balance.
Yeah.
We so often ship our kids off to everything
Well,
and
and
let somebody else teach them, instead of, hey, let's have some time where they are together
yep.
learning, and we're expecting more of them, and we're teaching them how to be an adult
The book also
Christian.
talks about modeling, right?
Right.
This is an important piece of the conversation. So on here, I think it's page 178. If you guys have your books or want to come back and look at it, but talking about the Become research, they obviously need the Bible teaching, right? But they need so much more, right? We need to help them navigate through this world, and having that navigational help. They need someone to really walk beside them, to be encouraged to become. When we're talking about, having these really good, important conversations today, and I think any parent out there, any pastor, any ministry leader that works with children feels the weight of the conversations today that are prevalent in our culture, right? Gender identity, the sexual revolution, right? The cultural divide. We need to navigate them through those challenging
Mm-hmm.
conversations,
Well,
and walking with them and learning ourselves, but then also teaching them and having them understand from a biblical perspective what God says about these topics today.
the Barna study said 59% of teenagers are uncomfortable talking about it.
Right.
Why are they uncomfortable talking
Because
about it?
we've made
Because
it.
we're uncomfortable
We
talking
are.
about it, and we've made it uncomfortable. We made them feel like if they want to come and
Yep.
ask these questions and talk about it, we're gonna look down on them in some way, or we're gonna
Right.
avoid it. And when we start avoiding topics, they pick up really quick
Oh
that
yeah.
that's something they probably
But
should
can
be
we
avoiding.
be co-learners
Absolutely, yeah.
and be vulnerable with the kids?
It's okay if we don't have all the answers,
Right.
right? Like, you
So
know,
what do you guys think about this? Kind of quiet out there today.
it is.
You guys have any thoughts or ideas? I mean, nothing's, we want to, we're learning together here. Hi, Jerry from Idaho. Welcome. Yeah.
Yeah, if you guys have thoughts on this, please let us know. We're just kind of slowing down here a minute and giving everybody
Giving
a
some
chance
space.
to
Yeah, for
catch up.
sure.
I thought it was interesting. We talk about this idea of giving them something to do. Um, they also say that students who mentor children remain in the faith.
Mm,
Is the way they say it. So what I love about this though is that not just disciple making.
right.
So it's doing what God called us to do. So you have an older student investing in a younger student, discipling them, and so now they're growing in the Lord because they're doing what the Lord has designed them to do. The younger student is growing in the Lord because they think it's really cool that this older kid is investing in them. So they feel this belonging and they're paying more attention. And here's another thing that that I think is interesting. I think God knew what he was doing when he talked about discipling, right? What are we doing when we're discipling? We're teaching. If you sit in a sermon situation or a, I understand the Holy Spirit is involved, but if you sit in a situation where there's just an instructor,
Right.
studies show you retain 5% of that.
Right.
So say on a Sunday morning, if you sit there, you might retain 5% of that sermon. If you teach something, you retain, it's like 90%.
Okay. Yeah. And is there a difference?
So, well, yeah,
Because I think for a long time we think teaching, we think of that instructing
right,
from
but it's
top
so my
down.
point here is so you've got a young person teaching
Oh yes, yeah, yeah,
a
yeah. Oh, okay,
younger
okay.
person.
They're
So
the
what's
one teaching it.
so now
Yes.
the believing part that's
Yep.
sinking in because it's not. I haven't just retained 5%. I've
Right.
retained a massive amount of this. And
Yes.
those of us who teach know that you just retain so much more. You learn more because as you're teaching, you're learning more than you're teaching, and it's God's design. You
Right. Oh
know?
yeah. Yep. For sure. Faith is forged in the real experiences of life. Hmm.
So how do we do that, Scott? I've been thinking about this. How
Yeah.
do we
Yeah.
get say I'm an Awana leader
Sure.
and I've got 5 or 6 kids
Right.
and I get it. I get it. Okay. So I know I've been teaching them this stuff and it's time to go live it with them. How do we do that?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the club setting, I would encourage them to be praying
Mhm.
in that time,
Yep.
like giving them a space. So it's not just me that as a
Mhm.
leader that is praying, but I'm inviting them to pray.
Yep.
I'm inviting them to help each other with.
Let's
Yeah, keep
stop
going.
there for a
Okay.
second. How many adults do we know in our churches who won't pray
Oh yeah.
in a group? They've
Why?
never learned.
Why? Exactly.
Keep going.
Yeah.
That's the importance of that though.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I think so. Here's the other thing about really doing this well as a loving, caring adult, as a leader in the children's wing of your church. It goes beyond that Wednesday, Sunday. To be able to do this well, you've really got to engage. And I would encourage you too, if you're out there and you're saying, okay, well, where do I start? Start with one, to
Yeah.
where you become a little more intentional and with that child. We have these small groups, and sometimes it's really challenging to really do this 100% well,
Right.
with
Especially when
all
you
of
got
them.
that one kid that you're constantly like you're trying
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
corral that one kid.
Right. Yeah. But this goes the becoming piece, and even all of this, the belongably become, it goes beyond, from my perspective, the Wednesday or Sunday.
Yeah.
You have to go
Well,
beyond.
and I think that's part of
Engage.
my
Yeah,
point, right? We
exactly.
start small. You can start by rethinking how you're doing your time with them. And even if you're not in Awana, if you're not in Awana, it doesn't matter.
sure.
It's the same. And Awana says that, right?
So
This
here,
is just how we should be doing kids ministry. So it goes beyond that. We need to actually be thinking beyond the classroom.
But practically speaking, too, it also, if you have the opportunity with a kid and they come to you on even on Wednesday or Sunday night, and they begin to open up their world to you, my parents are going through a divorce. I mean, just one, or I haven't had a meal. Like
Mm-hmm.
becoming interacts with them where they're at.
Right.
It's doing that life
Right.
with them. It's coming alongside them and being a part of the journey with them.
Yeah.
The church that isn't welcoming the becoming piece says, okay, that's too much.
Yeah.
I can't go there with you in this, whether it's the topic of same sex
Right.
or any of these topics that we're like, whoa, when we do this, we're
Mm-hmm.
not welcoming with open arms, and we're not inviting them to become.
Here's the thing. Here's the other side of that, though, and I know we have to be careful with kids, right? We
For sure.
understand the day that we live in as leaders. So
Oh,
when
and
I
we have to
say
be
this,
careful.
we
We
do
have to be
this
careful.
safely,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
But what
Well,
kind of
Scott said-
power would come when that kid says, "Hey, man, you say to them on a Wednesday night, you seem really down. Yeah, I just found out my parents are getting a divorce."
Right.
What would it say to that kid if you said, "Hey, we've got other kids here right now, and I know it's not easy, and we've got some things we've got to do tonight. But what if maybe we get a hold of your mom or dad, and after Awana, we just go get some ice cream, or we go to McDonald's, right?"
Yep.
And again, be safe. I'm not saying don't grab you and the kid. That would not be the
Yeah,
smart thing
right.
to do. But oh, I matter, right? And now we sit down and we engage in that conversation with
Yep.
them. How much more are they going to be apt to come back
Right.
another time and bring another thing to you
or to the church.
or to the church?
Right.
Yep.
This is a safe space.
Right.
This is a place where I feel like I belong, and I'm inviting to become as well.
Right.
And where I can find truth.
And it might not have to be that drastic. Maybe it's a matter of, hey, now maybe they want to play games, but maybe they don't feel like playing games because, okay, that's fine. I'll grab somebody. They can take
Yep.
care of the rest of the crew.
Right.
And we're going to sit over here and we're just going to read some scripture and pray.
And
We're
pray.
going to talk
Exactly.
about this.
Yep.
You know?
And just look at it in a biblical perspective.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we're talking about here. And it goes against probably what's been set up for such a long time, and the
Right.
instructional mode of discipling. When you talk about discipling kids in the past, it's been, okay, I've got a group of kids here and I got to talk through this lesson.
Right.
Right. This goes way deeper. This dives into a place of really inviting them into your world and yep. Okay, yeah, Sharon Willett, very challenging. Yes. And I think parents today, right? And it is difficult for parents. Let's be honest. But parents have a big role in this too. I mean,
Right.
obviously, right? Deuteronomy 6, right?
Yeah.
They're the ones that have the responsibility here. And I think parents need to also really live in this belong, believe, become.
They do. Yes.
Like, we
So
can't-
I think what she says here is
Yeah.
the key, because it is parents. Really the role of the church. We're talking about us discipling kids,
Yeah.
and we need to be. But what we're working on in our church is we're looking at how do we put more energy into training the parents to
for
be
sure.
better
For sure.
disciplers. Because Sharon hits it on the head. It's the parents are the number one discipler of those
Yes.
kids.
Yep.
And what we've learned and what we've talked about a lot here is, of course, there are things that our kids are going to be more apt to open up about to other people, maybe, or they're going to listen, right?
Yeah.
People will say the same thing to my kid in church that
Oh,
I
that-
said
yeah.
to them, and they're like,
Another-
"Dad," and
another
I'm like,
voice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think I've heard that
Yep.
somewhere before. So there very much is the church needs to be pouring into and discipling the kids.
Yeah, the power of a
And-
loving
And there's
caring adult.
right,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of kids that come into our kids ministries that don't have a parent who's going to do that.
Yep.
But the key, I think, a lot of the key is churches. We have not done a good job. Pastor Jason talks a lot about that. How can he equip his parents to, he just really wants things he can put in their hands
Giving
to
them
help
tools.
them.
Right.
And that's where we are right now. It's saying, okay, how can we better prepare our parents to be the
Right.
disciplers?
Here's a
and-
plug. Can
and
I have
how-
a plug
yeah,
on that?
go
Because we're
for it.
talking about this, right? There's tools. How can we equip parents with
Yep.
tools? Go to childdiscipleship.com, and there is a tool that you can get, a weekly email that will allow you to have conversational talking points with your kids,
Mhm.
and an at-home discipleship tool. that
Yeah.
is so important. We got to do it. And as parents, we've got to invest in that. And it's not like sitting down for 15 minutes and going through a lesson. It's just being engaged
Yeah, it
throughout the
gives you
week.
things
Yep.
through the week. Hey, when you're sitting at dinner, talk about this,
Yep.
ask this question. When they give you this thing that the idea, like, it's kind of, here's the kickoff for the week,
Yes.
and then you just keep that conversation
Yep.
going. There's even, at least the ones I've used, there's even like crafts, or
Yep.
here's a
Tools. Yep.
fun
To
snack
engage.
you can
Yep.
make, and
Scripture
right.
memory,
Oh
all
yeah,
these
all of
pieces.
that.
Yep.
Yep.
So
Songs, all of it.
yeah, childdiscipleship.com, and you can sign up
And the
for
best part is it's
free. It's
free.
free.
Yeah,
Woohoo!
it
We
didn't
like
used to
free.
be, but it is
No,
now. It's
yeah.
free. We
Yeah.
love free.
But there is kind of a stalemate happening too. I think it's good to at least recognize that the parents are saying, well, that's the church's job,
Right.
is discipling my kids. I bring them on Wednesday. I bring them when the doors are open. So I'm checking that box.
Yep.
And then the church is saying, well, hey, no, parents, you are the disciplers of the kids. So
but then
there has to be
we're not telling that, we're not teaching them how to do that. We're not giving them,
and there's
got to
be a partnership there for sure. So,
and parents, when you're listening, let me say this as well, because I see this from a pastor standpoint. This thought that, okay, the church is discipling my kids. I bring them on Wednesdays. I bring them on Sundays. But we forget how often we don't bring them because we let all the other things in life. And I'm not saying that sports is bad, or all the other extracurricular activities that we have our kids doing. That those are not wrong things. But when they're out of church more than they're in church, and you're expecting the church to be their discipler.
Well, and where are we placing our value?
And you're teaching, you're discipling them
something,
even if you're not discipling them correctly. You're
important?
You're showing them that whatever extracurricular is more.
And my
important
kids are in sports, and
Lord.
We are constantly in that balance of, okay, is this too much? Right. We don't want to come to Sunday or Wednesday or when the doors are open in the church and be exhausted,
right?
Because we've been so go,
right, right. And even from your point as a parent, right? How can you serve in the body if you're constantly busy with sports? Extracurriculars, whatever it is, not a bad thing.
No,
my kids
are learning a lot.
My kids are starting soccer for the first time this year, so we'll see how that goes. No, we'll see. But so I'm not saying that that's bad, but it's got to be intentional how we're doing it. Why do we even want them to play? Right. I know why. The main reason that I've said yes for soccer is because they're going to be playing on a team with a bunch of unsafe kids.
Right. Yep.
So it's an opportunity for me to meet parents in my community. It's an opportunity for them to make friends with unsafe kids in their community.
For sure. And again, Sharon nails it, because I think there is also a weight on parents today that is unlike any other time.
Right. Yeah.
We feel it.
Yep.
And we feel the need to have our kids being involved in those extracurricular things, which are good. They have a purpose, like you're talking about. But then we also feel the weight of trying to answer these very difficult questions that we don't even know how to answer.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, honestly, today, right? I mean, it's like, it's heavy.
Yep.
It's heavy stuff. It makes me go, okay, grandkids. I'm going to have grandkids. What kind of world are they going to live in? Like, so
but we can't be afraid of that.
We can't be afraid of it. No, I'm not saying that, but I
No.
think we need to recognize that it is challenging.
Yes.
It is a challenging job and that they're living in today. So
there's a difference between being afraid and recognizing our need to prepare them.
Yeah. And so parents, it does start with you today. Are you navigating with your kids? Are you asking them to become Christ followers certainly by the way you live your life, right? And by the way you're exemplifying that,
right?
Because what you're showing them something.
And pastors, are you equipping parents?
Yes, yeah, and leaders.
Yeah,
are you? Yep. And good stuff.
Well, Scott, we're out of time.
Did we just finish chapter 10?
I think we did. I think we're gonna, one way or another, we're gonna call that chapter 10.
Yep. No, this is good.
Well,
stuff.
guys, thanks so much for watching. I felt like a whirlwind today. There was a lot to talk about, but I trust it was helpful and encouraging. Again, thanks for watching. The other thing that I would just say here real quick, for those of you watching on YouTube, if you jump over to Facebook on A Resilient Conversation with Scott and PJ, just search A Resilient Conversation with Scott and PJ. We have a Facebook page there that at times we share some different things, and we love that to be a place for you to jump in and say, hey, here's a thought, or here's something
Yeah.
I'm wondering if anybody's dealt with this or whatever. We'd love to have you there. On the flip side, if you're on Facebook and you didn't know it, I have a regular
Yep.
YouTube channel that I post to almost weekly, sometimes a couple times a week. So I would love it if you jump over there and subscribe. It's just my name, Joshua Putnam, and you could subscribe. I would love that. And then
So
you've got, for
yeah,
those involved in Awana,
Awana, Northern Michigan.
yeah,
Yep, Facebook group page, and we have a lot of connectivity there. You can hear about stuff that I'm doing in the field and giving shout outs, and then also people ask questions in there and get some answers. Collaboration. We're stronger when we work together.
yes.
And so that's a place to be a part of that. So when we come back, we're gonna be in chapter 11 and 2050, a resilient strategy.
We started this 2.5 years ago and said, "Oh, we'll be done in a year."
Yeah. No, yeah, little did we know.
That's all right. We're
This
having
is
fun
good
with
stuff.
it. Hopefully, it's helpful.
Yeah, and is this helpful? Like, we would love to hear from you if this is something that is you're getting something from this. This is an encouragement to you. Whether you're a pastor. Again, we're talking to pastors, ministry leaders, and parents.
Yeah.
As we're focusing our conversations around those people groups and trying to be an encouragement and having some good conversation around this important topic. And are we adequately preparing the future leaders of the church? That's the question.
Right. I think you hit it, Scott. We can't keep doing what we've been doing. So now we're trying to just make people stop and think, how can I do this differently?
Be intentional. Yep.
All right. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next live stream.
Until next time.
Part of my channel. I'll see you in the next video.
Until next time, go make resilient disciples.
Yes.